gold. And having performed all of the ceremonies necessary to ensure the life of Osiris in the underworld, she returned to her son Horus, and by the theurgic arts, of which she was mistress, saved him from death, from the stings of scorpions. Horus, having grown to man's estate, and having received from his mother the tradition of his father's murder, longed to avenge the evil deed. Osiris appeared to his son in a vision, instructing him in the means by which he could overcome the hosts of Typhon. Now we are led to infer that Horus gathered about him an army which, meeting the hosts of Typhon, battled with them for many days, achieving victory. Typhon, according to the legend, was taken prisoner and turned over to the custody of Isis. Now Isis, being his sister, could not bring herself to put him to death, but set him at liberty, which so incensed Horus that he laid hands upon his mother and removed from her head the insignia of royalty. Thereupon Thoth gave her a new helmet, made in the shape of an ox's head. Typhon next accused Horus of illegitimacy, but Thoth proves his royal descent. Typhon again goes into battle against Horus. In fact, 2 battles are mentioned, in both of which Typhon is worsted. And Horus regains the kingdom of his father, and is regarded, to at least a certain degree, as the actual reincarnation of Osiris. So here you've had a death and a resurrection. After its resurrection in the underworld, the shade of Osiris visits Isis, and in consequence thereof, she gives birth to another son, as it were, by a Holy Ghost, for she knew no living man. This child is called Harpocrates, and Plutarch says of him that he, quote, came into the world before his time and lame in his lower limbs, unquote. Harpocrates is usually depicted as a nude figure, his head adorned with a single curling lock of hair on the right side, this being with the Egyptians a symbol of youth or adolescence. He is sometimes depicted with an elaborate plumed headdress, or wearing the double crown of the northern and southern empires. His finger is placed to his lips, which Plutarch interprets as a gesture symbolic of his childish and helpless state. The Greeks and Romans, however, considered this gesture to be a symbol for silence or secrecy, and from this has arisen the custom of placing the finger to the lips as a motion for quietness and secrecy, and we do it today. Statues of the god Harpocrates were placed at the entrances to temples and sacred retreats where the dramas of the mysteries were performed, as a sign that silence and secrecy should be observed in the holy places, and that all initiates were bound by vows of discretion. Harpocrates is also sometimes shown standing, and at other times he is depicted seated on the blossom of a lotus, just like Buddha. Although he is usually figured with childish immaturity of body, the imperfection of his lower limbs, as described by Plutarch, is not apparent in any of the Egyptian drawings. It therefore seems that the statements concerning this deformity should be more carefully examined. Samuel Squire, whose translation of Plutarch's Isis and Osiris, made in 1744, is still the most often quoted by Egyptologists. Well, he states definitely, quote, lame in his lower limbs. G.R.S. Mead translated the same essay much later and gives a slightly different rendering of Plutarch's words. Mr. Mead says, quote, weak in his limbs from below upwards, unquote. This difference in wording, though slight, may have an unexpected significance. You see, there's some general information contained in Synesius's treatise on Providence that should be included in this Osirian epic. Synesius is of the opinion that Osiris should be regarded as an historical king, whose father, transcending in wisdom, instructed his benevolent son in all the secrets of the divine science of government. Synesius is moved to this conclusion by a desire to keep all speculation within the sphere of the reasonable. The Platonist bishop seems to have derived much of his account from origins foreign to Plutarch's treatise, or possibly he interpreted differently the restrictions imposed by his vows. Synesius, a prudent and conscientious author, wary of myths and fables, and exhibiting a truly Platonic conservativeness in his handling of subject matter, yet Synesius was beyond question a deeply religious philosopher, and an initiate of pagan mysteries prior to his conversion to the Christian faith, and therefore may have hidden the true meaning of the fable. Thomas Taylor is of the mind that the treatise on Providence was written while Synesius was still a votary of pagan mysteries. Now, if so, the writing is unbiased and trustworthy and presents a fair picture of the mystical traditions of the Egyptians, interpreted in terms of Platonic metaphysics, but only the exoteric would be allowed to be seen by the profane. Synesius inserts into his narrative a considerable description of the various character of Osiris, which he sharply contrasts with the vice-ridden nature of Typhon. He also explains in detail the process of election by which Osiris came to the throne of Egypt. The electional ceremony, as described by Synesius, is evidently itself a fragment from some secret ritual relating to the installation of a hierophant of the mysteries. Next, Osiris receives from his father an elaborate dissertation in the Platonic temper concerning the relative power of good and evil, in which he is fully warned against the machinations of Typhon. Possibly the most important sentence in Synesius's treatise occurs during this dissertation. The father of Osiris is made to say to his son, quote, "You also have been initiated in those mysteries in which there are two pair of eyes, and it is requisite that the pair which are beneath should be closed, when the pair that are above them perceive, and when the pair above are closed, those which are beneath should be opened," unquote. Now, these words unquestionably have an arcane meaning and are incorporated into the narrative that the true significance of the whole Osirian cycle might not be entirely obscured. And I can tell you that the meaning, folks, is that the eyes above are the exoteric meant for the outer world, for the profane, and the eyes below are the esoteric meant for the initiate, the adept, the priest of the mystery schools only. Synesius does not describe the death of Osiris, but merely reports his vanishment and final restoration to the throne. In the latter part of the story, there was also introduced a certain philosopher who was a stranger in Egypt. This philosopher predicts the fall of Typhon and is an eyewitness to the recrowning of Osiris. Synesius says of this philosopher, quote, "He likewise then learned some particulars about Osiris which would shortly happen, and others which would take place at some greater distance of time, viz. When the boy Horus would choose as his associate in battle a wolf instead of a lion. But who the wolf is a sacred narration, which it is not holy to divulge even in the form of a fable," unquote. Well, the lion, we know, has always been of the tribe of Judah. Such is the amazing tradition of the good king Osiris, the first victim, the first mummy, and the first resurrection. He dies and is born again in three forms. First, as god of the underworld, where he rules the justified dead.